On July 9, 2018, a Moroccan airliner approaching Hoceima came within inches of disaster when it bounced twice off the Mediterranean Sea while descending in fog. Against all odds, the pilots could re-enter their heavily damaged plane and divert to a nearby airport without injuring any of the 58 people on board. That was truly an incredible job. How did they do that? Stick till the end of the video to find out. Hello and welcome to Plane Crashes Explained, where we discuss some of the most mind-blowing reasons and facts behind the most heinous plane crashes. Subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon so you don't miss future updates. Without further ado, let's get straight into this. Royal Air Maroc Express is a completely owned subsidiary of Royal Air Maroc, Morocco's flag carrier, specializing in regional flights within Morocco and in neighboring countries, particularly Spain. Its domestic routes supplement its parent company, primarily consisting of longer international flights into and out of Morocco's main hub airports in Casablanca, Marrakesh, and Tangier. Royal Air Maroc Express operates a fleet of approximately half a dozen ATR-72s, a high-wing twin-turboprop airliner co-designed by France and Italy that seats approximately 70 passengers. The airline puts its ATR-72s to work daily, sending them on numerous short hops across the country. July 9, 2018 was just another day for two unnamed Moroccan pilots working for Royal Air Maroc Express. They traveled from Casablanca to the Mediterranean city of Hoceima, then to Tangier, back to Hoceima, and finally back to Casablanca. Before the first flight of the day, the pilots agreed that the captain would fly the first leg and the first officer would fly the next three to gain experience. The first officer was a relative newcomer with only about 1,000 flying hours to his 61-year-old captain's over 13,000, despite having recently switched from the Boeing 737 to the ATR-72. The flight took off from Casablanca and headed northeast towards Hoceima with the captain in command. The weather in the area was dreadful, with overcast skies and fog rolling in from the Mediterranean, and the reported cloud ceiling of 800 feet was lower than the minimum descent altitude of 1,030 feet for the approach to runway 17. Normally, this would require the pilots to make multiple approaches while waiting for a gap in the clouds or to divert to another nearby airport, but the captain appeared unconcerned. Following a brief cruise phase, the pilots initiated an RNAV approach to Hoceima's airport's runway 17, using a series of pre-programmed points in three-dimensional space to line up with the runway and land without using ground-based navigational aids. The approach was normal until the plane arrived at the minimum descent altitude of 1,030 feet just before landing. One of the most fundamental flying rules is that you do not descend below the MDA if you cannot see the runway. But the captain apparently decided that the rules didn't apply to him, because when he arrived at the MDA and found himself still in the cloud, he kept going, descending at negative 1,000 feet per minute towards the ground. The plane left the safe envelope surrounding the glide path to the runway about 1 minute later, and the ground proximity warning system activated. "Terrain ahead, pull up," it blared, alerting the pilots to the fact that they were in grave danger of colliding with terrain. The captain, unconcerned, pulled up a little and advanced the throttles just enough to reverse his plane's trajectory. The plane entered a slight climb at only 45 feet above the Mediterranean Sea, narrowly avoiding a crash. Despite this heart-stopping close call, the captain appeared unfazed. He'd done it on purpose, in fact. After landing in Tangier, the cockpit voice recorder captured the pilots conducting the departure and approach briefings for the return trip to Hoceima. Because of the short duration of the flight, the approach briefing had to take place on the ground rather than during the cruise. After successfully landing in Hoceima on the last leg with his insane descent strategy, the captain decided to try it again, but this time with a plan in place. He told the first officer that this time they would try the VOR DME approach to runway 17, which had a lower MDA of 760 feet than the RNAV approach. Royal Air Maroc Express 439 took off from Tangier at 7:30 p.m. local time, carrying 54 passengers and 4 crew members, including a prospective hire working her way through Royal Air Maroc's training program, who was riding in the jump seat to familiarize herself with the ATR-72 operations. The plane quickly reached its cruising altitude of 13,000 feet, held there for 6 minutes, and began its descent into Hoceima. The weather had worsened since their last approach, with a cloud ceiling at 600 feet and fog off the coast stretching down to sea level. From the start, the descent was fast and steep. The captain instructed the first officer to use an excessive descent rate of negative 1,800 feet per minute as they approached 6,000 feet, and their airspeed was 230 knots, far above normal. Flight 439 lined up with the runway at 8:01 p.m. before accelerating towards the final approach fix, where they were supposed to be configured to land with the proper speed and rate of descent. However, as Flight 439 approached the final approach fix, the crew had yet to lower the landing gear or flaps. They were more than 80 knots above the normal approach speed and descending too quickly. By his preconceived plan, the captain set their target altitude to 400 feet shortly before reaching 2,100 feet. Meanwhile, the first officer worked hard to control their speed. The pilots extended the landing gear and flaps after the controller cleared them to land. The plane passed through the minimum descent altitude of 760 feet while continuing to descend at a rate of negative 1,800 feet per minute. The first officer was now pulling up while the captain pushed down, resulting in a massive force differential on the link control columns as the pilots fought for control of the airplane. But the captain was stronger and managed to keep the plane in the air for a few more seconds, while the first officer tried desperately to overpower him. The first officer advanced the throttles to high power at 35 feet, but it was too late. The ATR-72 slammed into the water with a force of 3.2 Gs at 8:03 and 53 seconds, causing it to bounce back into the air. Despite this, the captain kept pitching down. Flight 439 was diverted to the nearby city of Nador, where the weather was better a few minutes later. The 54 passengers disembarked safely after landing and taxiing to the parking apron. The high-speed collisions ripped a series of large holes in the lower fuselage, bent several structural stringers, and splashed seawater into the ram air intakes. The water rose high enough to rip the engines off, resulting in a catastrophic crash, but the ATR-72 survived thanks to its high-wing design. The captain told airline personnel over the phone in the immediate aftermath of the incident that a bird strike had caused the damage, and he had noted this on the official incident reporting form. However, anyone looking at the damage could see that a bird strike could not have caused it, and this dubious explanation did not sway Moroccan officials. Flight 439 had bounced twice off the surface of the Mediterranean Sea, bringing its 58 passengers and crew to within inches of death due to the captain's deliberate decision to violate fundamental safety protocols. Throughout the descent, the first officer's subordinate role was maintained as the captain issued various orders, and the first officer wordlessly obeyed. The first officer was physically controlling the plane, but the captain was effectively flying it. This blind obedience was only broken when the plane passed around 100 feet above the water and the first officer said, "This is not normal," and began to pull up on his initiative. Because of the damage sustained in the accident, the plane had to be grounded for 2.5 months for major repairs. It was eventually restored to service and continues to fly for Royal Air Maroc Express today, hopping around Morocco as it did before its near-death experience. Following the accident, Royal Air Maroc Express implemented several changes to ensure its pilots' professionalism and prevent a reoccurrence. They added a seal to the EGPWS switch on each of their aircraft, which must be broken to move it, in addition to extensive new training on stabilized approaches and threat and error management. Daily seal checks were implemented to catch anyone habitually turning off the system. The stupidity of someone can cost the life of someone else. The captains clearly had no idea what they were doing, so they decided to land the plane in the water instead of realizing their mistakes. It was quite fortunate for them that no casualties happened. What do you think? Whose fault was that? Let us know in the comments section below. If you liked the video, here are 2 more videos you'll probably like. Please leave a like on the video and share it with your friends. That's all for today.